Welcome to Decoding Parenthood, where we unleash the secrets of happy parenting. Today, we have Ms. Jenny with us, who is a health nutritionist, and we are going to talk about a very popular subject about sugar and how sugar affects us, affects our children. So welcome, Ms. Jenny.
Thank you for having me again.
Of course, of course. So, Ms. Jenny, what are your views about sugar? Should we, take it out from a child's diet? Is it possible to take out sugar from a child's diet at this, in this day and age that we live in?
This is a very loaded question. I'm going to try to answer it in parts. I think that, first of all, anything is possible if you put your mind to it and if you allow, a lot of time and effort to work in your favor. In terms of, is it possible to keep sugar completely out of the diet? If it depends on what you consider sugar and what type of sugars we're discussing, because there's so many.
Right.
And I think that before we can kind of dive deep into the answering that question, I'd like to just kind of give a brief explanation of what sugar really is.
Okay.
Chemically speaking, sugar is a disaccharide, which means it's a carbohydrate made up of two molecules. The carbohydrates are the easiest way for us to receive fuel. So for our body, for our cells. And we do need them. In general, for a general person, regardless of the age, we need carbohydrates in order to function because our cells need glucose in order to create ATP, and the ATP is a molecule that gives us energy. This little, mini lesson aside, where the carbohydrates are coming from and in what form is what's going to determine how beneficial or detrimental that carbohydrate is going to be to our body overall.
Okay.
So the carbohydrates, they come in single units, they come in double units, they come in long strings.
Okay.
And the single units, these are going to be your quick sugars, and they will make the fastest transition between being in your mouth and being in your bloodstream. The longer the chain, the longer it'll take.
Okay. So is one better than the other?
So great question. In general, the longer it takes a carbohydrate to reach from your tongue to your bloodstream, the more control your body has over the release of various hormones that are required to accommodate carbohydrate influx.
So what are some of the examples for the long ones versus the shorter ones?
So the shorter ones are going to be just actual table sugar, honey, etc. There are also very processed sugars like high fructose corn syrups and other fructose-based sugars. They will essentially, they're like the rocket of this group.
Okay.
So they will make almost an immediate transition from tongue to bloodstream.
Okay.
And the problem with that is that in order for us to be able to take that glucose molecule from the bloodstream and deposit it into the cell for energy production, we need a key to the cell. And that key is a hormone insulin.
Okay.
Insulin has to be produced in the pancreas. And from the pancreas, it reaches the bloodstream, attaches to the sugar, takes the sugar to the cell, lets the cell know that it should let the sugar in.
Right.
And then the glucose can go in and insulin disseminate.
Okay.
The speed at which those refined sugars are coming in is usually so fast that there is only so much insulin that can be pumped at that time. So you have a buildup of glucose in the bloodstream, especially if it's not just like a lick of sugar, but rather like a can of soda, for example, which is very high in sugar amount. If you look at the label, insulin that is not, able to accommodate, either because it's getting there too slowly or because there's just not enough that has been produced, the body will send a signal to produce more insulin, and that'll take time.
Right.
And in the meantime, the glucose, the extra glucose, is actually going to be deposited as fat in various cells, and specifically in the liver.
Okay.
And, to put it in like a huge picture perspective, over time, that fat in the liver will essentially crowd out healthy cells of the liver, and people end up with diabetes. Actually, no, diabetes is a separate thing, and I'll talk about that too. But fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And those things are not reversible. So taking steps way ahead of time are very, very important. The University of California in San Francisco did a study where they took children and removed sugar out of their diets. They kept the processed food, they kept the calories, they kept all the things that we know should not be in the diet, like bad fats and colors and everything. They just removed the sugar and replaced those calories with something else, just to make sure that the children stay on the same caloric diet. Within 9 days, they noticed a significant decrease in children for cholesterol levels, blood pressure. And these were, the children in the study were obese children.
Okay.
So they already came into the study with various chronic conditions that used to be only adult onset. And now we're seeing more and more children battle these issues. So just 9 days without sugar can actually, regardless of the weight, can actually significantly decrease inflammation to a level where it's now, trickling down to reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, etc. So back to the question of, should we really keep sugar in, take it completely out? I think taking steps to find balance and also educate kids are like sponges. They learn.
Yeah.
So if they can be educated in a very positive way without scary stories, we can, I think, make an impact where children will be also motivated to feel better. I usually, compare consumption of sugar to like rain on the bike.
Right.
A little bit of rain once in a blue moon is not going to do anything to the bike. If it's consistently raining, the bike is not covered, we're going to get some rust. You can take a rug, scrub it off. If it's out there for a long time, it'll rust enough where you're going to start to need like special scrubs and WD-40 and whatever else to remove the rust. And eventually the bike will rust enough where it's not really going to run anymore. So the goal is to find that balance where, if you leave your bike in the backyard once in a blue moon and it's not covered, it's okay. It's okay. But you're taking good care. Right? So we want to take good care of our bodies. And we want to teach our children to take good care of our bodies. There are actually lots of resources on YouTube where they have like little, like 5 to 8 minute videos on the physiology of sugar and the impact of sugar on health, done in a very like child-friendly format. So that's also ways that we can utilize, newer technology and media for our benefit. Because really, and very unfortunately, media has been taking advantage of our kids for the longest time.
Yes.
And this is my personal understanding of studies that I've looked at. Kids who don't have TVs at home will consume less sugar and less processed food. And it is not, I believe it's a correlation And the way these two facts are connected is because children are not exposed as frequently to the advertisements that are targeted to kids.
So it's not only TV, it's mainly the advertisement.
The advertisement, yes.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah, because you could watch a certain show that doesn't have advertisements and they're okay.
Yes.
But the fancy and the flashy new packaging and other kids enjoying a bowl of chocolate cereal is where it grabs the attention of the children. So when we talk about the sugars and we spoke about the single versus the multi-complex, are the artificial sweeteners okay compared to, regular sugar?
So I will express my personal opinion based on studies and a lot of reading. And I personally do not recommend that anyone uses artificial sweeteners.
Okay.
It has definitely been a very controversial concept.
Right.
And just to leave controversy out of this conversation, what I will say is that one of the reasons that I don't promote artificial sweeteners is because artificial sweeteners are they intensely sweet. So when we get a flavor or taste of sweetness on our tongue, the body senses two different values. How much sugar,
right,
and how intense the sweetness is.
Okay.
So every time we eat something that is intensely sweet, even if it's just a little bit, the intensity is what signals to our brain and says, ooh, that's my fix. I want more.
Okay.
I will use this as a segue to talk about the different types and forms of sugar, because we have sugar that's isolated, right? And these isolated forms of sugar can be sugar as in, the white sugar or the raw sugar that hasn't been refined. Right. By the way, brown sugar is white sugar mixed with molasses. It is not any healthier or different than regular white sugar.
Okay.
And then we have the unrefined white sugar, also known as turbinado sugar.
Okay.
That one just has not been, the impurities have not been removed.
Yeah.
And those impurities are actually very, very small amounts of nutrients. Okay. So you still get the same amount of sugar. You just get it either more processed or less processed. Honey is another very isolated source of sugar. There's nothing else that's coming in there, right? Yeah. Maple syrup, same thing. So they are considered to be different in terms of how they impact health.
Okay.
But all of these across the board are isolated sources of sugar. What the non-isolated sources of sugar is sugar that's coming in with something. If you take a fruit, which is obviously high in sugar,
right,
but comes in with a lot of fiber, and also time required for eating. If we lick a spoonful of honey, that glucose goes right into the bloodstream.
Right.
If we take an apple or banana or like mango, like anything that's super sweet that we often think about, we still need to chew it.
Yeah.
And by biting and chewing, we're physically creating a time lapse between when the food hits the tongue to when the food is actually going to enter the bloodstream.
Fruits are great, but then what if you drink it as a juice? But like
Excellent
a pure
question.
Juice, so like, instead of eating oranges,
right?
And I'm not saying about, buying boxed juices. I'm talking about squeezing and drinking fresh orange juice. Is that going to affect my body differently than eating an orange? Because I'm drinking, so it's going to the bloodstream faster, I'm guessing?
Definitely. Anything that we are going to be drinking will enter the bloodstream faster.
Okay.
Juices versus smoothies are definitely, different. Juices, that's just pure sugar, whether it's fresh squeezed juice that you just made. With smoothies, because you are putting in whole fruits, whole vegetables, a lot of people will also add protein sources,
Right.
either in the form of nuts or seeds or some protein powder. That will definitely slow absorption of sugar.
Okay.
Fiber always slows absorption of sugar.
Yeah.
Will it be the same had you eaten those veggies and fruit as whole veggies and fruit? Definitely not.
Okay.
However, it makes it a wonderful compromise. So we talked about finding balance in your life. Makes a phenomenal compromise where you can make a delicious smoothie. And that way, you can get lots of different veggies and fruits in without having an issue with, some children don't like the texture or they don't like the flavor. All of this is, covered up in a smoothie.
Okay.
Another option and trick is to make that smoothie and then put it in a popsicle shape and freeze it. So when kids want something sweet, you can give them a popsicle, and that would be a phenomenal way to kind of
avoid ice cream too. Yeah.
And you just call it ice cream. Yep.
Okay. So how do you recommend reading a food label to, our wonderful listeners?
So reading food labels is definitely a skill, and it definitely takes time to learn. The quick tips that I can offer is first looking at the ingredient list, actually. And can you quickly, easily, and smoothly read it very fast?
Okay.
Are there words that you need a dictionary for? If you can't read it smoothly, that means that you're getting words that are chemical formulas. And if you need a dictionary, that means you're getting ingredients that don't really exist in nature. So it's always a good idea to look for foods that will have the least amount of ingredients.
Okay.
And also ingredients that you would commonly find in your home. I look at sugar, fiber, and protein. These are the three things I look
What about
at.
the calorie content?
So I don't really look at calories. I will look at serving size.
Okay.
Because it's always, basically the trick that manufacturers are using is they want to get to a number that doesn't scare a person.
Okay.
So what they're going to do is if the number, for example, the sugar number is too high, what they're going to do is they're going to make the serving size a lot smaller than people actually eat.
Right.
And it doesn't matter because the label, the manufacturer has no authority to tell you how much to eat.
Right.
So the serving size on the label is really a unit of measure. It's a reference
like a breakdown, point. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So what you want, and this is why I don't focus as much on the actual numbers as the relationship to those numbers.
Okay.
So if you're looking at a processed food, you always want the protein and the fiber to be at least the same or higher than the sugar.
Okay. How do we, as, working families, how do we control our cravings, healthy versus processed food that, the food industry is serving, adding those extra flavors and making it more delicious that, we tend to go out to eat more than to maybe make healthy options at home. Or, and not only for us, but also for children. They might prefer to grab a pizza or, food available in cafeteria easily than to maybe grab a fruit. Like how do we work towards that?
Yeah, and you rarely hear of anybody addicted to carrots or craving. The quickest way to unlearn that is really to stop all processed food, cook all your own food or eat your own, eat real food. And then within literally a week, your taste buds will regenerate and then start to adapt. And you will notice that my apple tastes sweeter, my tomato is more flavorful. because we will now then start to feel those flavors that kind of went under the radar because of the overexposure of the palate to those high sugar, high salt kind of foods. And yes, there are definitely tricks to kind of make a balance, because if you go to places that offer like a salad bar or like a grain bowl bar, where you can get food that's been cooked, right? Because it's always nice to be treated.
Right.
And you cannot take that out of the equation. We go out to eat, not because we cannot cook, but because it's nice to be treated.
Like,
it's
take a
pleasant,
break,
it's enjoyable, it's something different.
Yeah.
So it's a way for us to still get that where food is prepared, that's nice.
Yeah.
It gives us a break. But then the foods that are there, because that's a bar, they are in a more natural state. They are expected to spoil, so the turnover is very quick. There are not as many of the hyperpalatable additives in that food compared to like other places.
Right.
And especially fast food places.
Right.
So choosing those options will be a nice compromise. Prioritizing cooking time, whether it's going to be a day on the weekend where we're cooking for the week, whether it's going to be, little bits here and there during the day, there is definitely a way to kind of make things like cook them that are healthy but don't take as much time, because one of the issues with cooking is that you have to clean up after.
Right.
And I know that a lot of people will not cook specifically because they might spend the time cooking, but cleaning up is more time than they wish to spend. So things like you can technically go to the store and buy a bag of coleslaw and put that in a saute pan and saute. And that's already pre-cut cabbage, right? So there's no chopping and there's no cleanup after that.
Yeah.
And then you can take, hard-boiled eggs, grate them over the cabbage, seasoned with salt, pepper, add some fresh parsley, and you have yourself a nice meal.
Now, when we are talking about sugar, of course, unfortunately, we cannot eliminate all of it from our diet because it's there. How can we go towards the lifestyle of living healthier with less sugar in our diet?
So I think really focusing on taking little steps is going to be the way to make that transition. So for example, if the children are used to having yogurt, buying plain yogurt and having the kid choose what they want in there.
Okay.
Maybe they want some fruit or some berries. Maybe they want a mashed up banana. Yes, instant oatmeal packets are quick, but oatmeal cooks in a minute.
Right.
So it's very easy to take plain oatmeal and then sweeten it with whatever you want, because most of the instant oatmeals are
sugar,
sweetened. There are a couple brands that do have the unsweetened one, but for the most part, it basically, if it's unsweetened, that's fine. But again, like, do you really want to pay for the packaging, or do you want to have the budget for be able to buy more fancy fruit to add into your oatmeal?
Right.
So when packing food for children, expanding the variety and also introducing them to foods that may not be common because of how much marketing has been done in terms of what children should be eating. So if you are teaching your children to eat better quality foods, you are ultimately helping them be healthier adults, because kids will experiment. Kids will overeat candy. Kids will do junk food.
Yeah.
However, while they're little, if you give them all this knowledge, you give them all this information,
Yeah.
you create a healthy environment in the house, and you recognize, I have no control
Yeah.
what happens out of the house. And then there is no friction, there is no fighting with, like, when kids become teenagers and they go in, they eat out, junk food, that happens outside of the house. You keep the peace, right? And you continue having healthy foods. So once they're done rebelling, and, for some kids, it may be a couple years, for others, it may be, 10 or more. But once they're done, they eventually will go back to what they knew. So whatever the environment, the soil that you prepare now to plant the seeds, that's what's, ultimately, you can at least, assure that they have the skills and the knowledge. And then whether or not they're going to utilize it is not really in our control.
Right. Yeah, it means it's just like the wonderful bicycle example that you gave. You are feeding the child the right knowledge and the right food. And then if once in a while they have a candy or something and there's a rust, you clean up. But if they continue to go in the right path, the bike will be fine. And, that's our ultimate goal. Those are definitely the things that we need to start learning. And it's, of course, not a 1-day thing or 2-day thing. It's an ongoing things that we're changing in our lifestyle. So we appreciate all the wonderful knowledge that you have given us. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.